show? Why, why are we only 20 minutes long this week? Hey! It's Romania Black, and, yeah, I went to, my internet's still out, by the way. Thank you, Reiki, for getting me the episodes this week. I have a VLC player, and I pulled it up on my computer, and I dragged the episode over there, and it, like, popped up the name. It just said link click episode 4, and then it said 20 minutes. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? The only thing I can hope is that can mean a couple things. That can mean this is a setup episode, maybe about the blonde woman, maybe. Or it's a setup for things to go down in the penultimate episode, which will be the following week. Or they're really setting it up and episode 6 is going to be like a big old giant chunk of an episode. I don't know how to feel about that, to be honest. And there's still, I'm going to be honest with you all, I've fallen down the rabbit hole with this series. I've just fallen in. It's over. It's over. There's been so many theories. We have so many comments to go through before this episode starts. So this is going to be a long intro. But I'm not ready for Conspiracy Board Sama yet. And I want to keep Whiteboard Coon at the ready after the episode. So I've even constructed, this is Sketchbook Chan. Sketchbook Chan is going to create things that will go onto Conspiracy Board Sama potentially that we need to address. So before we dive in to the comments, I just want to point out we're gonna be coming back to that before we even dive in the episode. But yeah, I'm glad I'm watching week to week with you all because there's just too much. So let's go through the comments, because I have comments from episodes 1, 2, and 3 to talk about, screenshots to talk about. There's a lot. So, Vikigi 6626 for episode 1 says, it actually surprises me that Liu Guang went to that anime convention and allowed others to take so many photos of him. I agree that he needs as many photos as possible to be able to sneak a peek at those times. But in the case of time traveling, are those photos really useful to him if he's not the one taking them? Well, but you could be the person that took the photo in the same vicinity as Cheng and Liu Guang. So possibly, if he had the powers of Cheng, but we'll talk about that in a second, he would go back in someone else's body, not his own. And in the one timeline, which we'll talk about that, he did get Cheng's powers. So that's a possibility. But anyway, also, if I remember correctly, in season 1 and 2, it was said a couple of times that Liu Guang avoids being photographed and posting his photos on social media because bad people might use photos of him, I assume. But here Liu Guang literally goes to a convention as a cosplayer. My guesses are that 1, he just can't allow himself to change these events, so he has to go to the convention despite the risk. Or 2, it's one of those first time travels for him and he doesn't yet know that the bad guys can manipulate or find him through the photos. So that's a really good comment. My response was, honestly, I think that it could be that he either learned his lesson from this arc in the past and before and starting in season 1, he was more elusive and hid to keep those photos from falling into the hands of other time agents, which is what you said. Or there are 2 other possibilities. 1, Liu Guang wants to create more opportunities to repeat the timeline and go back and redo if needed. Or 2, this is part of an overarching plan, which my conspiracy tinfoil hat is coming on. Part of an overarching plan he has to throw off Liu Xiao and the redhead and crew and knows stuff that we're not going to find out about until, probably season 3. And, just to make us pull our hair out even more while we're waiting. So I am very much in the camp that Liu Guang has a plan, that this is part of an elaborate setup and that he has a plan and that we're not going to find out. That what this show reminds me of, to be quite honest with y'all, is the series Arrested Development. If you've not seen Arrested Development, it's a 3-season show. There were seasons after the 3rd season, but we don't count those. They were like 10 years later. They're not good. But anyway, the first 3 seasons were 3 consecutive seasons of Arrested Development, and it was a comedy show, but what you didn't realize as you were watching is that the entire series was building a thread of things that by the end of the 3rd season, you could trace it back to the very beginning. And even though this was a comedy show, it had all these intricate little subplots, these plot lines, and everything was a giant domino effect. And by the end of the 3rd season, you were like, oh, that's been set up from the beginning. And this series reminds me of that a lot. So I feel as if this is a giant setup. This arc is just setting the pieces, setting the stage, so to speak, for what's going to go down in season 3. And I feel like by the end of season 3, it's all going to be this giant reveal. But I could be wrong. But anyway, that's a really good comment. So thank you, Vicky, for saying that. Now, Mary M. Hassan in episode 1 says it's so interesting that Liu Guang kind of debunked the butterfly effect and seems to believe that small changes of the past won't change the set future. Because in season 1 and 2, he would always freak out if Cheng Xiaoshi changed anything. So interesting. So I have a theory of a way to save Cheng. Seeing how every time Liu Guang tried to go back in time and save him and it didn't work, it could be the constant in the equation of his death is Liu Guang. And maybe if he never met Cheng Xiaoshi, he would live. I'm going to challenge that just a bit. I feel like that what we saw in season 1 may have well been, I feel like season 1 might have been the before all of this timeline. And in the first timeline, Liu Guang was like, okay, we can't change the past. We can't go do this, whatever. And by season 2, I feel like maybe we've come to realize that we're in a different timeline. And it's the one where Liu Guang's like, nope, I'm going back and changing the past because you died and I don't like it. And I forget what I just told you. I'm screwing the rules. I'm doing my own thing. But I don't know if Liu Guang not meeting Cheng Xiaoshi would actually save him. Because if this whole thing with Cheng Xiaoshi's dad has anything to do with Liu Xiao, it could be that Liu Xiao would have lured Cheng Xiaoshi to Bridon anyway and potentially hurt him. And back then, Cheng Xiaoshi is hot-headed enough, he might have just gone off on his own and would have died. And so Liu Guang is feeling like this is the opportunity he has to save him. So I don't know if that's the case. It could be, but I don't know. I think there's a very good chance that he would have been in danger regardless. Algumalgum for episode 1 says, one of my current tinfoil theories is that the twins are related to the Liu family. I don't know how common it is, but the twins' mother has the same Liu name as her family name, written with the same characters. Liu Jing is very snobbish and classist, so I find it odd that he let Liu Xiao as a child play and be friends with Li Tianqian, whose family is more middle class, even sending the driver to pick him up. Them being related could work around that. Yeah, that very well could be. I don't know how I feel about shows where every character is related to every character, unless it's like a big sprawling cast, and Link Click doesn't have a big sprawling main cast. They have lots of little ensemble people that are like episodic, but I don't know if I would like the twins being related to Liu Xiao, and I wonder why Liu Xiao doesn't make more mention of it to Li Tianqian, or maybe that's not, maybe he doesn't see the need to, but it's very possible. It could be very possible. Hell, Liu Xiao doesn't look that different from Cheng. It could be that the dad is related to the Liu family and Li Tianqian and Li Tianqi's mom is related to the family too. They could all just be one family drama, a big Hamlet-like soap opera, and we just gotta hope it doesn't end like Hamlet. Right? We just gotta hope that, but it could very well be. I don't know. We'll just have to see. But that's a really good theory. Lucia Farrell, Lucy Afarul, 5740, and with small screen computer for episode 1, both noted, and I didn't realize this, that the animation is done by a different studio this season, or this arc. The first 2 seasons were done by Land Studio, and this one is done by CMC Media. Honestly, no offense to Land Studio, CMC's doing a pretty damn good job. I like what they're doing. I really like the animation this season. It looks gorgeous. So good job. Yay. Cheng Xiaoshi can dive into a photo and leap into an adjacent empty space while leaping isn't confirmed. Oh, this was in regard to episode 1 when I was like, how could he transport to the photo studio before? And they noted, Cheng Xiaoshi can dive into a photo and leap into an adjacent empty space. While the leaping isn't confirmed in an official capacity, we have seen that he's used this technique to fight Liu Min in the dark room in season 1. Cheng Xiaoshi might have used the photo on the wall or the photo in front of Liu Guang to dive and leap in front of him to stop the bullet. I think that's true because the photo when the bullet gets shot, the photo of the 3 of them is right there. So there's a very good chance that Cheng leapt through the photo to peer out on the other side, which, with the whole multiple timeline theory that's been going around that we'll talk about in a second, with that, in one shot, it shows the photo being broken by the bullet, and in another shot, it's not. So it could be that sometime it worked for Cheng, sometime it didn't. They all so far have resulted in him dying, unfortunately. Siri2552 says, for episode 2, I would like to also point out something very important from the previous seasons I just realized. I could be totally wrong, but here we go. In the last, I'm going to correct this, but I have something to go along with it. In the last episode of Link Click Season 2, near the end, we see Liu Xiao returning from China after spending his days studying abroad, which they say was probably when he was at Bridon. So we could assume that Link Click Season 2 takes place after the events of the Bridon arc. I don't think that's it, because this is supposed to take place before the events of Season 1, right? So Liu Xiao and Cheng Xiaoshi in Season 1 when Ling, oh my god, no, I'm forgetting her name, Ching Li, oh my god, no! Anyway, Xiaoling, oh my god. My mind went blank for a hot second. But anyway, when Xiaoling is talking to Shan in Season 1, they say that Liu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi had just gotten back from studying abroad. I think in Season 1, we have the events of Bridon, then Season 1, because the two of them have been abroad, and that's the case, and then Season 2. But I do think it's important to note, why did Liu Xiao go back abroad? Or had Liu Xiao stayed in Bridon after Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi had left. So it's very possible that you had Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi in Bridon with Felix and Liu Xiao and all of them. Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi left and went back to China while Liu Xiao stayed back behind in Bridon. And now he's caught back up with them after he's got his affairs in order or whatnot. So I think that's the case. I think that is the issue, but that's really good to note. Lavender Sky 2025 says for episode 2, I don't think Liu Xiao is being honest about his ability. What an irony. What an irony. Is his heart rate accelerating? I don't know. I will venture that his ability is just detecting heartbeats. However, do I think that the redhead has an insane ability? Kind of like Cheng Xiaoshi, which we'll talk about in a second? Possibly. We'll talk about that in a second. But I as of right now, I think Liu Xiao is being honest about his ability. He may not be honest about who's helping him, but I think he is being honest for the moment. But we'll see. You could be right. Okay, so here's the thing. This is coming off. Falling Daisy on Discord. And this is where we're going to get into the episode 3 theories. So I know this intro is going to take forever, but hear me out. Falling Daisy on Discord, after watching episode 3, said something I'm curious about though. Episode 3 of this arc, as well as the first, show clear animation inconsistencies. I'm wondering if that's a clue to the viewer as to how many times Lu Guang has jumped back in time. I think it is. One of the biggest errors has been the clothing on Cheng Xiaoshi's bed in episode 2. When he falls and Xiaoling comes into the room, they show the bed at least 3 to 5 different times, and the clothing on the bed is different 3 separate times. Oh my god, yes, it is. I went back, I looked at things, I was like, wait, what are we doing? What is happening? So then Discord from there got into kind of a frenzy. So I'm going to share some things with you. Last week, as you all know, the pool scene was driving me crazy. So Anime Annie made this note saying, episode 3, I looked back at the swimming pool stuff for Jia Fei, aka Felix, and noticed something. Jia Fei is in the same clothes by the pool and underwater, but one of the staff's headbands changes colors in 2 of the shots and is wearing a slightly different style of top. Also, the dark-haired model in the red and pink swimsuit is blonde in a white swimsuit whilst Xiao Fei is being drowned. Now, it could be that there's a different model for the next shoot, but that doesn't explain why the staff members change, nor the inclusion of another staff member and the older man in the red cap. There are differences in those scenes. So that made me wonder in Discord, being like, okay, could we be looking at different timelines all strung together for this arc of the episodes, all the events strung together through different timelines to make this, and the one that we're following the most is the current one, the most prominent one that Lu Guang is in. But he's gone back and redone the Bridon arc over and over again, and maybe at the end of this we are going to find out. But that is insane. Also, Anime Annie pointed out, it got me squinting hard to look at all the clocks and dates. On the plane when Lu Guang woke up from his nightmare, which kind of felt Matrix inspired to Anime Annie and myself too, it said that it was 12:30. Then when they're about to land, it shows 15:30. Though I do think this is an animation error, as the clock should be upside down for us where the battery symbol and the date part are. And then when Lu Guang is looking at the departure information, it shows that it's 10 o'clock on the 24th of August. Now, unless they're making the time difference between the fictional place they live and Bridon different from what real timeline differences would be in China and England. China is 7 hours ahead when we're on British summertime. This means it's either an error or 2 or 3 separate instances when Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi flew to Bridon at different times of the day. Yeah, so that's very possible. If Lu Guang is trying to change the outcome of what is happening, he could be experimenting, being like, well, what if we left it this time? What if we left it this time? Also, they point out in Discord that when, we'll get to that in a second, but there's a departure time here. We're going to get, there's so much, y'all. I'm diving into the rabbit hole. Also, Reiki said for episode 3, link click makes me paranoid because I don't understand if the very marked yellow lines are just a stylistic choice for the change of location or are a clue. I'm going to say that I feel like the lines could be a stylistic choice because it is a different animation studio. But we're going to talk about that in a hot second. So I'll come back to that. And then Anime Annie, this is the one that blew my mind as well. That I tried to find, because I was trying last episode to figure out if the numbers on the football players meant anything. They figured it out when they're all standing at the bar like this. I was trying to figure out for myself to see the numbers. The numbers on the football fans' shirts, when we're given a full view of them before Jaffe appears, Google Translate translated it to meaning, the hooligans are still as bad as ever. What are you doing? No, there are no animation errors in this show. Everything is intentional. And they're driving us crazy to build up for the end of this arc. I guarantee it. So Reiki says with episode 3, and coming back to this point, I wonder how much Lu Guang knew in season 1 about Emma's case, considering I remember a few details of the first episode. And the game company, if he meets Liu Xiao, now that he gives him the business card with the name of the company he'll investigate. But in the first episode throughout season 1, he doesn't give the impression of knowing anyone from the Liu family. That's why I continue to have doubts in which timeline we are. If in reality, that meeting was never supposed to happen, or it happened the first time too. No, I think that what we saw in season 1 was like an OG Patient Zero timeline. And then by season 2, that's when we start getting the flashes of Lu Guang and Cheng dying, and the part where Lu Guang gets stabbed, that's where the timeline starts to get weird. And I think that's when Lu Guang and everything starts to add up to change the timelines. I think season 1 is an OG original timeline. I could be wrong, but I think it's OG original timeline. But I think season 2 is when the timeline starts to get put together with other timelines. I think that's when it starts to get merged. And I think that meeting Liu Xiao in the airport is a new factor, is a new thing that could possibly change the Emma outcome later on. I could be wrong. So what I wanted to get to is Anime Annie's other comment, where they say, now that I'm thinking of that moment in correlation with all the different times on the clock shown before, what if one timeline, Lu Guang's first encounter with the redhead, was actually at the airport when their flights at Bridon coincided with one another? And so he was on guard for the redhead passing by then but they arrived at a different time this time, so they didn't see him there. Yes. So when he's looking up at the departure times and the arrival times, he's trying to figure out, how do we avoid seeing the redhead? Which now they've met the redhead, so it doesn't matter. But it's like Lu Guang is trying to alter events to try to keep certain things from happening. And it's not working because time is what it is. But that's insane. In relation to Felix being different in multiple timelines, this is what we talked about. If we are dealing with multiple timelines, that will make it harder to know if he is more or less trustworthy because we can't be sure which timeline we're being shown. Yeah, here's the thing. The Felix timeline so far that we've seen in the show is the biggest hint to me that we're dealing with multiple timelines, because Lu Guang's seen 2 different photo posters of him. Things are changing. Things are different. So the scary thing is, if Felix is more innocent and less involved in this timeline than he is in this one, if Lu Guang is changing the timeline to try to save Cheng Xiaoshi, who's to say that the redhead or the woman doesn't have an ability that could coincide with Liu Xiao's to do the exact same thing, and that they're as onto them as Lu Guang is onto them. You tell me. You tell me. So then, also, the winning goal by his team was made, just like Liu Guang was waiting, on my second watch, Xia Fei looked as if he was gearing up to react the way he did and gain the attention of the supporters in the bar. Whereas my first watch, I just wrote him off as having his eyes closed from having drunk too much. Yeah, at this point, we don't know. At this point, Felix is a live wire. We don't know if Xia Fei is just pretending, or if he's an actor, or if he's in on the whole story, or if he's innocent. We don't know. We have no clue. And it could vary depending on the timeline that we're following, which is insane. So also, one thing noted was Xia Fei's focus when he entered the bar. He looked for the cat ear hat. But when Liu Xiao met them, Lu Guang was wearing it. When they met the old man in the bookshop, Cheng Xiaoshi was wearing it. So it makes me wonder if Xia Fei was told to approach the one in the cat ear hat, but because they switched who was wearing it, there's a chance he was supposed to cozy up to Lu Guang and not Cheng Xiaoshi. That very well could be, because in the airport, Lu Guang was wearing the hat, right? So that's when Liu Xiao saw him in the hat. So there's a very good possibility of that. And then this is the one, y'all. This is the final one that made me just go, okay, wait a minute. The ISBN, everything that has a number in this series has a meaning, and it has an importance. And the ISBN number for the Shakespeare book is 1, too long by 1 digit. So that's suspicious. And 2, if you put it into a Type 9 keyboard in Chinese, which is a very common way to text in China, the predictive text comes out with a Chinese phrase, which apparently means Dad has already died in English. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to tell you about our dear sweet Sketchbook Chan. So this is Sketchbook Chan. And what I'm doing is I have Felix. Who knows? I've noted that there's a lot of primary colors on here because primary colors are important in link click. They are connected to the powers. The only one that didn't have a primary color was the old man. His was faded out. Do what you will with that. But you could say it was like a version of blue, maybe, which we'll talk about. But yeah, we've had blue bells, blue vases, blue clothes, blue flowers, the yellow lining around the style. There's been lots of gold tones in the elevators, things like that. And then the red has been like the abyss of Lu Guang's dream and the blood surrounding everything. So lots of primary colors, not a lot of greens and purples up in this joint, if you know what I mean. Felix, the multiple timelines, the different departure times in the airport, the pool scene with the posters, the plane watch, the background edits. We could be dealing with watching multiple timelines happen at the same time. So I feel also like the primary colors are important to note 3 different types of time agent powers that we've seen so far. Okay. So we have powers to control. We have powers through time. And we have powers to detect or alter free will and fate. Now, the ones that can directly control people are Li Tianqi and Li Tianchen. They can control either by touch or through photographs. But I include Cheng Xiaoshi on here because he technically controls people through their memories of the photos. He possesses them. I guess powers to possess might be the better term here, right? Then in blue, the power to control time. Lu Guang can do that. He can see through photos and control what he sees 12 hours before, 12 hours after, or even beyond that. Then we have the gambling man that was the uncle in episode 2. He can control time because he can look into the future and see briefly into the future like Lu Guang can, right? Then you have Cheng Xiaoshi. Cheng Xiaoshi can control time because he can go through the photos and go back in time and forward in time. Then you have the powers to detect and alter free will or fate. So Liu Xiao has that ability. By him being able to detect heartbeats and sense that in others, it is a way for him to alter free will and fate because he knows something that humans should not normally know. But you also have the twins, Li Tianqi and Li Tianchen. They technically, through controlling others, are controlling people's fates as well. And then the factor in all this, Cheng Xiaoshi, also through diving into photos, is essentially controlling the fates of others. So you may know a common variable here. Cheng Xiaoshi can go into all 3 of these categories. His abilities enable him to possess people, to travel through time, and to alter fate. So Cheng Xiaoshi is a man of many talents, but he's one that fits all three of these categories, which is maybe a reason why these people are targeting him. Because Liu Xiao may be like, oh, you have too much power. No. Too much power. We can't do that. So we don't know exactly what the redhead can do yet. And we don't exactly know what the other blonde woman can do yet. But they're going to go on Sketchbook Chan as soon as I find out. But yeah, no big deal. I've spent over 25 minutes recapping the last 3 episodes and everybody's comments that I've been like going insane about. And first of all, thank you all so much for being so kind and considerate and not mentioning the promo materials and stuff like that. I will get to it when I get to it after this arc is over and we can go down the rabbit hole even further. By that point, Conspiracy Sama may have to make an appearance at that point in time. But for now, it's just, there's so much. There's so much. My head is spinning. I'm like, and this episode's only 20 minutes long. Maybe for a reason. Maybe they know that's all we can handle. But anyway, I have seen people have been spoiler tagging stuff in the Discord for this episode today. And I've been like, okay, I need to watch the episode. And then before the discussion, I'm going to go back and look at that dialogue that's been spoiler tagged. And we're going to go from there. So yeah, so without further ado, you know that feeling where you're like, I don't know. That's where I am with this episode. Yeah, okay, but anyway, thank you all so much for watching with me and diving down the rabbit hole and going insane about this show with me. It's great, right? And thank you for Reiki for giving this episode, but we're going to dive in back in time to episode 4 of Link Click, the Bridon arc, and see what this 20 minutes of madness is. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and I'll see you all on the other side. What could happen in 18 minutes? I mean, I get why they shut it off right then and there, because that's a cliffhanger to end on, but so as far as we know, yet Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi have not used their powers that way before. So, and from Lu Guang's reaction, we're going to go back through the episode. I don't think he expected this to happen. And have we changed the timeline? And why did they end it there? Damn it! So, I went to the Discord, and there hasn't been a lot of comments yet. They'll probably all happen, like, this weekend, and I'll have to add it for next episode. But there was one comment specifically when we get to the watch and everything and focusing on it. But, so, Felix is a curious character. Felix is curious because I get the vibe that Felix is kind of being tugged at both ends. That on the one hand, Vane is his name, not like vanity, but Vane as in like inject it into you. And I don't like that. Vane's freak me out. So no. Call him Mr. Raider. Anybody know that 90s song? It's like techno pop. Call him Mr. Wrong. Now it's Vane, V-I-N, but still, call him insane. I need an edit AMV where somebody takes Mr. Vane, the 90s techno pop jam, and edits it to Vane from this series. I need that. Wait till after episode 6 is over, but it needs to happen. Mr. Wrong. I'm gonna have that song stuck in my head the rest of the day. Anyway, so we learned some things. Felix is so curious because he has the biggest question mark. And here's my thing about Felix. I have a theory. I'm going to say the theory, and we're going to see if it manifests. I think Felix is going to die in this arc. I think Felix is going to die. And I think that Felix's death is going to influence Vane and influence Vane to work with Liu Xiao. I think that's what's going to happen. I could be wrong. I think that Felix is going to die. I could be wrong in this, but I think that that's going to influence whatever's going to be happening. Because as of right now, so Liu Xiao in Bridon, his whole suspicion is just that Lu Guang was acting weird. He had Lu Guang's heart rate accelerating and he wanted to know why. Now, we as the audience, the question is, did he already, does this Liu Xiao know why they're there? He clearly seems like he was influencing what was happening. So, but the question is this, here's another question. Liu Xiao wears the same damn clothes in every scene we've seen him in. He doesn't change outfits. He says he has 9 pairs of the same pants and the same damn hat and the same t-shirt. His closet is just a goth's dream. And he doesn't wear different clothing. So the problem is we don't know which Liu Xiao started the quote unquote game. And we don't know his timeline. We don't know if the current Liu Xiao is the one that we see saying certain things, or if it's the Bridon one, or if it's one that knows Felix, or if it's one talking to Vane. We don't know. We have no clue. It's up in the air. So that makes it even more confusing because he wears the same clothes. Him and Vane wear the same clothing, so we don't exactly know. We can't pick out which timeline they're on. At least with Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi, we can see them in different outfits and kind of get an understanding of what's happening. But with them, we have no clue. So how much does he know about what's going on? How much is he influencing? How much does Vane know? And then the big factor in all this is poor Felix. I do kind of feel bad for Felix because he was hired. He was hired by Liu Xiao to spy on Cheng. We found that out this episode. That was made clear. But then Liu Xiao is also working. He's working with Vane and funding him in ways. So did Liu Xiao get hooked up with Felix through him? Is that how that worked? Is that why? And this is clearly the side gig. And I like that Felix doesn't like Liu Xiao. He calls him the really, what does he say there? He says the pestering client or something, or pain in my butt client. He doesn't like Liu Xiao, which good on Felix. But this is the crazy part. Felix really likes Vane and trusts Vane. And Vane is super nice to Felix. But Vane also wants to bite people's head off and eat them for everyone else. So I'm like, what is happening? Is Felix the Shin Ching Cho to Vane's Lo Bing Hei? What is this? Because Felix does not like, so here we have this situation. We have Felix. He does not like Liu Xiao, who has hired him to spy on Cheng Xiaoshi and Lu Guang to see why they're there and what they're doing. Okay, but then Felix is also hired by Vane, and he seems to like Vane, but then Vane is working with Liu Xiao, and Vane is the one that ends up shooting these two. So why? Why does Vane go through all that trouble? And the thing about it is, the Vane in this timeline does not seem antagonistic towards Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi yet. So here's my thing. I don't trust Liu Xiao any further than I can predict his wardrobe changes. I don't trust Liu Xiao at all. Do I think Liu Xiao would manipulate Vane and manipulate Felix? Yes. Do I think that Liu Xiao might intentionally get Felix hurt to manipulate Vane? Mm-hmm. If he can tell that Vane feels a certain way about Felix, then he could use that to his advantage. And he's been known to manipulate people in the past, so I would not put that by him. And would he manipulate a situation to put Felix in danger and then blame it on Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi to influence Vane to do things for his benefit? And I say that because it very much seems like in the past, Liu Xiao has also manipulated Li Tianqin. His words to Li Tianxin weren't exactly like, oh, sorry about your sister's potential death and or incapacitation. My condolences. It was like, hey, you want to go wreck shit and burn the world? Like, that's where season 2 ended. So, and then that brings up, what the hell is Li Tianxin doing in all of this? What is he doing during all the current timeline? In the current timeline, when the redhead goes, when Vane, I want to keep calling him the redhead, but he has a name now. When Vane goes into the photos to get them, what about Li Tianxin and Liu Xiao? Where were they in all of this? What is happening? So this arc is setting up dynamics and setting up things with these characters, but it is not giving us solid answers. It's gonna drive us crazy and then be like, tune in next time for season 3, and I'm gonna chuck my shoe at a wall. Anyway, let's dive into this episode because I spent like 10 minutes talking about the preamble to this. So the boss is boss, and Lu Guang, like Felix is like, oh boss, you made it to save us. I don't know. There's a part of me that feels like Felix is innocent in all of this. There is another part of me when they went back to the bar and Cheng mentioned his dad's name. Everyone instantly was like, what? Him? And the good news is Cheng did not say that's my dad. Cheng didn't say that's my dad. Although Cheng Mannion, Cheng Xiaoshi, you could assume things, but he didn't directly say that's my pops. Didn't say that. He was just asking about the man. So as far as they know, it's not confirmed yet that Cheng is his son. Here's my thing. They talked about him running a language school, that he ran a language school. So we have the Cheng men running this language school. There was a planned fire is what we heard at the end. And supposedly there was one survivor. Now, was there really one survivor, or did they just say that and because the episode's called And Then There Were None? Like, and then there were no survivors. We don't know. Did Cheng Xiaoshi change the timeline? We don't know. And at this point, is it possible that if Cheng did change the timeline and the person didn't survive that supposedly was supposed to have survived, is that enough to make the radars for Liu Xiao and Vane go off? Are they, at this point in time with the Bridon arc, are Vane and them connected to a time agency? We don't know that. We don't know that. I don't think that they are, but we don't know. But the moment that Vane shows up, Lu Guang looks pissed. Lu Guang is like, I don't like where any of this is going on. Oh, it's like, finally you're here. I don't like it. Lu Guang's like, I don't like any of this. And he looks directly at Cheng with a smile on his face. The part that's so scary about Vane is that he tells Felix later, he's like, oh, well, I saw Cheng and, he looked like he could be a model. When has Cheng ever been, like, scouted for modeling? I mean, not that Cheng's a bad-looking person, don't get me wrong, but if you looked at Cheng and Lu Guang side by side, would you be going after Cheng as the model or Lu Guang? I'm just saying, and this isn't meant to read Cheng, but we've seen in the show where nobody else has done that. So you have to question to yourself, was Vane actually looking at Cheng like, oh, I felt like he could be a model? Or was they looking at Cheng being like, aha, there you both are, found ya. Because you can't read this man. He's terrifying. And him smiling, being like, oh. And he like goes straight up to Lu Guang and Cheng. Lu Guang looks terrified. And Cheng's like, why is he staring at me like that? And then he says, you look tasty, with his vampire outfit on, looking like he's about to take a literal bite out of our sweet, sweet Cheng Xiaoshi. Nope. No, Vane scares me. Yeah, and his accent, his English accent, Lu Guang's English accent, done. Over. It's over. I could honestly listen to Vane talk in English all day long. I was like, oh, hello, sir. Hi, would you like to speak in that very nondescript accent? It's not British, but it's not American. What is this English accent you have? I want to hear more of it. But yeah. And of course, Cheng doesn't know what he's saying, and he reaches for him. Now, here's the part that's interesting. He reaches out to touch him. Does his ability have something to do with touch? Because Lu Guang snaps his face. Okay, when Lu Guang smacks his face away, the clock reads 20 minutes. So I'm going to keep track of times. Times have been essential in this episode. So the slap happens at 0020 is when that happens. 0020 is when the slap happens. I'm going to keep track of that. Okay. And he smacks it away. And it's like, do not touch Cheng. Okay. I'm so curious. But the thing about it is, Cheng ends up shaking his hand anyway. Cheng is shaking hands with all of these men. Cheng, quit being chummy. Stop it. And he's like, what did he say? And then, of course, Lu Guang says, oh, he said hi. Uh-huh. And then he says hello. And then he's like, oh, hi. And then when Cheng's like, oh, but then Lu Guang doesn't stop him from shaking hands. So he's like, oh, hi. Nice to meet you. My name's Cheng Xiaoshi. I'm fine, thank you. And you? And he says, I'm vain. Anytime somebody introduces themselves with a one-word name that is very nondescript, you should probably run for the hills. Hi, I'm Laser. Then you're like, oh, no, that's great. Good. Nice to meet you. Awesome. Cheng needs to stop being nice to everyone he meets because he's going to end up getting killed. And then Felix is like, oh, well. And then this guy comes out, and this entire scene, for the record, this entire scene where, okay, what did he do to grab that? That rock that was going towards Felix's head. He goes to grab it, and he turned his wrist to grab it. Uh-huh. Yeah. So this entire scene with him as he like grabs the rock and throws it, the entire fight scene between Vane and these football players was to establish, he says the youth of these days, like, what is he, 30? Like, and he has the metal fan. He has a fan. He has a metal fan, not to be trusted. Nope. I don't know how to feel about any of this. This whole scene was to establish that we should be utterly terrified of the fighting capabilities of Vane. Vane can fight. It's not good. He's pretty scary. He basically one-ups and owns all of these men without so much as taking his jacket off, which he took his jacket off in the photo studio when he was going after Lu Guang. But yeah, this was just to establish he's terrifying and we should all be scared of his fighting ability. Little bit worried about it, let me tell you. Yeah, everything's fine. And of course, Cheng is like, yay, you did such a good job. And then Lu Guang's like, we got to get out of here. Okay, when he goes to snatch him, it says 0021. Okay. I'm keeping up with this watch because this watch is terrifying. So he's like, okay, we got to go. And then they grab the crowbar, but then he's like, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. And they all run away. Okay, 11-7, 8-7, 11-5. You all make out what that means. And then he says, are you guys all right? And notices that they've left. And Felix is like, yeah, they flew the coop. He's like, you scared them off, boss. And he's like, scared? I was just saying he'd be a good fit for the business. A compliment. Now, good fit for the business may not be a model. He could be talking about being a time agent. So that could have been a little underhanded comment to be like, oh, I thought he'd be good for business. But not the business that Felix is thinking of, because Felix is like, what? You can't just say someone's tasty. Think about how many people ran during interviews because of that. But then it gets flicked by him. Like, you call me to clean up your mess, and then you start lecturing me. And he flicks at Felix, but then he gives him the head ruffles. He's like, I know I messed up. And so he asks how the side gig is going. I don't know how to feel about it because I feel like Vane, I feel like Vane likes Felix, like legitimately cares about him, but I don't know what to make of that. Like, I don't know if Liu Xiao is going to get Felix hurt and blame Cheng and Lu Guang because he was spying on them and it just happened that they, because here's the thing. Liu Xiao could get Felix hurt and then be like, oh, well, it was because he was following Cheng and Lu Guang and they got onto him and caught on and they hurt him. And that could get Vane riled up. I don't know. Felix feels like a pawn. He feels like a pawn to me. And his name literally means good luck and good fortune. And this show would totally subvert that and be like, he's going to die. Like, you know? So I just, this episode makes me have really bad vibes about Felix. Really bad vibes that something's going to go down with him. It's not going to be good. You heard it here first. I think Felix is going to die, but I could be wrong. Also, to get to Reiki's point, there are a lot of blue lines in this episode in the lining, a lot of blue. Take that what you will. Okay, so 25. They're 0025 as they're walking away. Okay. I don't know if these times are going to be significant for any reason, but Lu Guang's like, you know, we can't just leave without saying anything. They helped us out. And then it's still 0025. He says, what's wrong with you? And Lu Guang, he's like, why are you acting weird? And he says, we can't stay here. It's not the right time yet. So he's like, we shouldn't have met Vane at this time. Like, we should have met him in the airport. We shouldn't have done that. And then, yep, the lantern. Of course, the lantern with the raven sitting on top of it. Signifying knowledge, but possible omen of death. Why not? So, okay. In this scene of Lu Guang's dream that happens, there are blue lines and yellow lines tracing this, Reiki, if that helps you keep track of that. I thought for a second that we were going back into the present, that he snapped out and was back in the present timeline before all this with Vane went down, but it was just a nightmare. Okay? And he says, we have to hurry up. The client will be here soon. And then he's like, what client? And he says, well, what else could it be? It's about a photo. And he says, how do you know about your power? And he says, well, did you sleep your brain out, didn't you? He says, Emma, Ouyang, Dodo, we've handled so many cases. How could I not know? And he's like, okay. He's like, we are back in the present. And it says there, 00. So in the dream, it's the same time as when Cheng dies and he goes back in the past. This show is insane. He's like, I had a nightmare. Yeah, and what does it say there? It says September 13th, 2021. Yep. So it's back in the present. And he said, you better snap out of it. You're the only person in the studio now. If you don't step up, how can we rest assured? Meaning that Xiaoling is dead as well as Cheng. And then seeing the blues and the reds. And he says, we've all died. Remember? And that's when he wakes up. Honestly, they do a really good job of making Lu Guang look absolutely terrified in this moment. And I don't blame him. I would be horrified if I had to relive that nightmare again. Nope. Yeah. Nope. So the beds. There are 2 beds. But honestly, would we consider it even more gay that they pushed them together? You know what? They couldn't show us because of censorship. There's probably like a scene. There's probably like a deleted scene where the beds are pushed together and Lu Guang's like on his side looking over at Cheng in the middle of the night and he reaches out a hand slowly to touch Cheng while he's sleeping, but then he withdraws it. I was like, probably. But yeah. So when he looks over and he doesn't see Cheng and he freaks out, but then Cheng has the medicine to give him and he fell asleep at his bedside. Y'all. Also, want to make note, how'd Lu Guang get in them pajama jams? I think we all know. Where's my fan fiction? Also, if we're going to go by outlining, in the shadows, the pillows and stuff are outlined in blue. Now I'm going to pay attention to that the entire series. But poor Lu Guang, he looks like he is worse for wear. He says this is the 3rd time already. So he's talking about the 3rd time things have been messed up. The 3rd time that things have not gone according to. So the way that the timeline has been altered. So he says this is the 3rd time the timeline has been altered. And so the gears and everything are falling away. The first time was before we came to Bridon. He says the photo should have been handed over to me right after Cheng found it. Then we started our investigation. But news interrupted that. So the photo was interrupted. That brings up a whole host of questions. Like when they got interrupted, when there was the interruption with the photo, because this is the thing. this is the crazy thing. It feels to me as if Liu Xiao is trying to keep things on track or prevent Lu Guang from altering things. Okay? Because at first, he says that the photo was given to him by Cheng. Now, if Lu Guang went back into the past to try to change the past, when Cheng gave him the photo, Lu Guang could have been like, oh, okay, oops, lost the photo, guess we can't go to Bridon, and that would have stopped all of that, right? That would have changed the past entirely, and who knows what it would have done, but it could have saved. Now, do I think that Lu Guang would have changed everything as dramatically as that by just getting rid of the photo? Probably not. But it could have gave Lu Guang a little bit more time to figure out what to do, which could have gave him a better chance of altering the past. But instead, it seems like Liu Xiao and Vane were like, no, we're not going to have you alter this moment. It's going to happen. So they triggered the news interruption to keep Cheng's thought process on track with going to Bridon. That's step one, right? That's the first part. The news interrupting. The second time was at the airport where Jia Fei's poster changed. And surprisingly, we met Liu Xiao in Bridon. So yeah, again, the second thing is not only that the poster changed, and Liu Xiao is at the airport. So that's something new. Okay, that is an unexpected change, which again, could be Liu Xiao making sure that they stay on track to go where they're needing to go. And the third time was yesterday, when we should have escaped at the crossroads and not run into him there. So, yeah. So they knew they were going to run into Vane, but not there in that moment. So the Vane interruption. To me, it seems like Lu Guang is trying to keep the timeline on track right now because he's trying to work within confines that he can control. And if he knows what's happening next, he can try to, predict what's going to happen. And that will allow him to have a better understanding of how to keep Cheng out of trouble, but also work around in ways that might help him to whatever his goal is, whether it's to change the past or whatever. He's trying to act within parameters he can control and variables he can control. But if the timeline starts to change and starts to change too dramatically, he won't be able to predict what to do and he won't be able to control it. And it could be disastrous, right? And so far there have been 1, 2, 3 instances where things are getting a little bit out of control and he doesn't know what to do. So as he's sitting there looking around, he's like, although I've tried my best to recreate my past experiences, subtle changes are still happening in people or things related to him. He's like, could it be? And that's when he has this thought that makes him like freak out. Because he's like, could it be that my choice has created uncertainty for the node of death within certainty? Ooh. So my choice has created uncertainty. Okay, I want to get this. I want to get what he says here. That Lu Guang's choice to go back in the past and try to change it has created uncertainty. Get this. I want to get this exact wording right and talk about it. Has created uncertainty for the node of death. For the death node. Because, yeah, Lu Guang's like, oh, shit. Within certainty. So, on first glance, when you first see that, you would be like, oh, well, is that a bad thing? Because if he's trying to change fate and get to where Cheng doesn't die, then creating uncertainty for the death node within certainty has created uncertainty for the death node within certainty. So if it's taken, basically, it's created uncertainty, so we don't know what's going to happen now, and it's for the death node within certainty. So is it saying that at this point, it's now like we don't know if the Death Node's going to happen or not? Or is it going to be expedited? Or is it creating a possible rift in the time flow? And it's like Lu Guang's like, and then that brings to light, like, if Lu Guang has not been going back and forth in the past over and over again, and this has been just one timeline, then are the little inconsistencies that we are seeing as the audience, are they actually the flow of time itself, like, glitching because Lu Guang's messing with something he shouldn't be messing with? Is that what's happening? And the entire fabric of time as we know it is becoming slowly unraveled? Who knows? So it says here, I want to look in that. Okay. Anime Annie pointed this out on the desk, that there was this moment where it says, we've either got confirmation of continuity issues this episode, or the animators are trying to melt my brain. They did a close-up of Lu Guang's watch this episode to show when his nightmare occurred, and then the date that he wakes up in the hotel room. Now, the date on the watch during the nightmare is fine. It's the exact same time as when he chose to go in the bird photograph after Cheng Xiaoshi's death. It's the close-up, which is September 13th. It's the close-up of the watch on the bedside table that's the problem. Or potentially the departure board in episode 3 is the problem. The date on the watch this episode is the 24th of June, 2019. That'd be 2 weeks after the Comic-Con they attended, which could definitely fit. The issue is that the departure board in the airport specifically gave the date of August 24th. At one point this episode, though, Lu Guang's watch also reads 0000 and could read the 16th of April 2021 as a date, but I need to sharpen the image. We're going to look at that later. I think this one on the table, honestly, I think the thing on the table is a continuity error. I think it's an animation error. I think they meant to make it 08 instead of 06. I do think that that's an issue and an error. But then, in the same vein, it now says 11:30, so it should be the next day. So it should be August 25th, right? Instead of the 24th? Shouldn't that be the case? Oh, show, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing this to us? What is happening? So yeah, basically, Cheng is like, you should drink up, you have a fever, right? Have all of it. I love the two of them just sitting on the bed together. It's super cute. He's like, I can't just leave you when you're sick like this. Oh, I told Jaffe we'd reschedule to meet with him. Funny that you said that, because Jaffe knows where you guys are staying at, and he was walking to your hotel room. And he's like, oh, I'll go see him. You know, Boss Cheng is here to take care of you personally, and you'll be back on your feet in no time. So then it says 11:31. Okay, it still says, I feel like they keep showing us that watch because it's going to have importance later on. And he's like, the restaurant isn't going anywhere. It's too late to go until after you get well. But Cheng, I feel, Lu Guang, you're not fine. Lu Guang wants to protect Cheng, but he can't say that he wants to. And Cheng is super sweet and kind, that he doesn't want to let Lu Guang hurt himself. So he makes him lie down. Don't make me tie you to the bed. Lu Guang might actually like that, Cheng. I'm just saying. Lu Guang might actually be okay with that. I want to point out the one mirror in the room is a really good tool throughout this episode, because the mirror is used a lot to reflect, which is interesting. But also, Lu Guang being asleep, like, it brings me back to the first episode of season 2, to the nightmare. Also, seeing Lu Guang in the light with the light shining on him as Cheng walks into the shadows is kind of morbid. And I'm like, show, why would you do that? And this whole season so far has been about doors opening doors, like hotel doors opening, doors to burning buildings opening, lots of doors opening in this. Like, when one door closes, another opens. Is that the flow of time itself? What can we do? But yeah, and then the sunlight shining. Okay, now that says 11:32. So far, so good. I'm going to be like, I'm going to get, what does it say on that watch? It still says the 24th. Okay. So Lu Guang follows behind him. Of course he does, because he wants to check up on him. Also, if Reiki is talking about the yellow lines, when Felix shows up here outside the hotel, the yellow lines are back on. Everything's outlined in yellow. Make that what you will. This show is getting us to question everything, isn't it? And blue lines as well. So maybe it's just a stylistic choice. Remember to ask the manager about what happened 10 years ago. Now, what's interesting is Felix, Cheng almost forgets to do that. He forgets to ask about what happens 10 years ago, and Felix gets the ball rolling again. Kind of like, again, they're trying to keep them on track. So that's interesting. I wonder if they made up the whole deal with the survivor. I wonder if they made up the whole deal with the survivor, because I wondered if they wanted to influence Cheng to go into the photo and to reveal his powers and to reveal it and to try to figure out something about his dad and whoever was with him. I wonder if that's the case. I wonder if they made up the survivor story, because it was kind of weak. They were like, oh yeah, there was a survivor, but we don't know anything about them. And I'm like, then why'd you bring it up? I don't know. It feels like the fact that Felix kept them on track felt forced. But also Felix, I don't think Felix is malicious. I just think he's doing a job. I think that based on what he told Liu Xiao, he's just doing a job and being honest. And Liu Xiao can tell from his heartbeats that he's being honest. So I feel like Felix is just a pawn caught in the middle of this, which is really, really sad. But his outfit of disguise is pretty hilarious. He's like, I don't want to run into those guys from last night. And he's like, let's go. I also like the cat that keeps showing up. And so then, yeah, they find the guy here that owns the bar. And he's like, yeah, you're going to owe a lot in damages last night because of all the turmoil you've caused. And it's fine. And poor Felix is like, but I don't have any money. But I'm assuming maybe the money extra he gave to Liu Xiao helped cover the costs. Poor Felix. I really think he's an innocent in all of this. And he's just being used by the other two. He says, aren't you here to find someone? And that's when he says, I'm looking for Cheng Wei-min. Yeah. Now, if you didn't know who this person was, would you react like that? No, you would not react like that. Here's my theory. I think that despite running the language school, I think that Cheng Wei-min was like in the mafia, or he was a mafia man, or he was in some kind of organization, because I mean, Liu Xiao clearly has ties with his uncle who was kind of running a gambling thing, and they knew Cheng Wei-min. So I wonder if Cheng's family were like in the mafia over in Britain, in Bridon, and were in deep, and people just knew who he was by word of mouth. I wonder if that was the case, because it was 10 years ago. But, you know, legacies last a while, and Cheng's like, okay. And then he's like, oh, I don't know who that is. And I'm like, you're bullshitting. I know. Cheng's like, how dare you? No. So I don't believe them for a heartbeat. And he's like, I thought the name of this restaurant was a lead. And he's like, it's a Kishwali word that, what does he say it means? He's like, I picked it. I took the idea elsewhere. It used to be a language school called Bahati. Yeah, and it burned down in a fire. Also, the red lights that are on the side there, the stoplights that are all red, that seems like a big old giant red flag. Also, it feels like maybe it's just a stylistic thing, because they use the yellow lines in the sunlight to highlight and the blue lines in the shade. So maybe it's just that, but I think that's interesting. I bought it and turned it into a restaurant. Now, the question is, the woman with the blonde hair, is she responsible for the fire in the past from 10 years ago? Or is she going to light this restaurant on fire again? That is the question that we got to think about here. I bought it and turned it into a restaurant. Even though it's been 10 years, the fire still makes me quiver. So many kids died in that fire. Interesting. And of course, Cheng's like, why does my family have to be involved in angsty things? Why does my family have to be involved in stuff that involves angst? No, thank you. So then he remembers the text message. And he's trying to think about how to ask. And then that's when Felix says, you know, is this Cheng connected to the school? And he's like, well, I don't know. And while he's like, I came to Bridon just to find out where he is. And that's when Felix asks about details from the fire. So maybe Felix wasn't leading the conversation because of his job. Maybe he just genuinely felt sorry for Cheng and was like, okay, let's do this. But that brings into account, did Felix orchestrate the hooligans like hitting them? Because that would mean it's premeditated and he's on to the act, but I don't know anymore. I honestly think maybe he was just drunk and that's just us assuming about it. And it could be that we are just meant to assume. Maybe it's meant that we're meant to assume that Felix is suspicious, but that's the red herring. Felix is actually the innocent one. It also doesn't escape me that Felix looks a lot like Liu Min. Like with the blonde hair and the dark underside. He looks like Liu Min in that respect, which makes me wonder if Liu Xiao is maybe okay with being antagonistic towards him, but we'll talk about that scene later. Then he says, oh yeah, there was only one survivor. Supposedly a student there, which I'm guessing is the little girl that's in the picture here. The little girl that's there is the survivor that she had, but this must have been from the past because 10 years ago she would have been older, right? Supposedly a student there. And I want to go back and see, is there anybody in that photo? Yeah, there's people. The woman with the hair. Okay, there is the students there. There's a man and a woman setting up the picnic. Is that Cheng's parent, Cheng's dad, and that woman? And they're setting up stuff from them? And who's in the background there? There's a kid with blonde hair. There's a kid with red hair. This is 10 years ago. I don't think that one would be Vane. I think Vane's older than that. Okay. But he's like, oh, okay, supposedly a student there. So then Cheng says, well, do you know where that student is now? And they say, I don't know. And he's like, oh, well, the news hardly covered it. Most of what I know is from word of mouth. Which, if that's the case, then you don't even know if the survivor... If you just heard about the survivor through word of mouth, then you don't know if they actually lived or not. And could the survivor be the blonde? I don't think so. But it's very suspicious. And so at that point, that's when he's like, I like that. I'm like, Tianj, I'm like, look, Felix, you should not be looking over his shoulder at what he's texting. And Lu Guang's like, okay, why does he look at his clock? What's important about that? Because he's like, if no news covered it, then maybe I could search for it. But that's when Lu Guang is like, I like that the ringtone is "You're a lazy bug." And Lu Guang, of course, is like, now it's time for me to act. I'm going to do my best Academy Award-winning nominated thing, being like, I need you back here quick. I can't hear you. And he's like, I can't hold on. Okay. Maybe it's because I've read some fics like this, but did anybody else think that this could be like ABO? Did anybody else think that maybe Lu Guang was going into heat and he needed Cheng Xiaoshi to come back there? Just me? Okay, great. Anyway, so as far as we know after that, I'm like, is Lu Guang allergic to cats? Because, I mean, he's allergic to definitely maybe one part of female anatomy that you could relate to. I'm gonna stop! I need to stop. I'm gonna stop. But I feel like that maybe he's allergic to cats and that's why he's holding his breath, because maybe cat hair like makes him allergic. But, and then when he says, help me, Cheng is like, I have to go to Lu Guang. The way they animate him is amazing. Poor Cheng Xiaoshi. And he's like, you sound really sick. I gotta head out right away. And that is when Felix gets the call. Whenever Cheng leaves, Felix gets the call from the pain in the neck client. Now, what are the odds that the pain in the neck client, that is Liu Xiao, called immediately as Cheng left? Is it because Lu Guang knew from the time what was about to happen, that they were going to get interrupted by Liu Xiao? And he's like, nope, I need to stop this right now. I think so. I think he knew when things were about to happen. And oh my God, the fact that the cat's just on top of him is really, really funny. That they're all just like, okay. And then poor Lu Guang. Lu Guang having to deal with those cats. But then, yeah, he sees him come out. Green light means go. And Lu Guang, our certified cat man, as Cheng runs back to the hotel. I love that Lu Guang, whenever he says step on it, I was like, dude, speak in English again, please. So what does he say? He said, step on it there. What did he say as they were going back? He said, it must be today when we visit Uncle Fong. And it must be me who finds the photo at the hotel with him. So the one elevator's out of order, which seems convenient. But he says it has to be me who finds the photo at the hotel with him when they visit Uncle Fong. Okay, so that happens. I'm guessing is that who they met earlier, or have we not met Uncle Fong yet? And so the hotel, so he was going to look it up. Oh, so that today was the day they had to meet Uncle Fong, which they did. And then they have to find the photo at the hotel with him, which is what he was going to look up. But that's when he called him to make sure that it was at the hotel with him. Okay. I'm surprised that Cheng didn't take the stairs immediately, that he was waiting on the elevator. I want to reduce the uncertainty so I can figure out how to avoid that certain path. I want to figure out, we have to figure out the uncertainty to avoid the certain path. Okay. His choice created uncertainty for the death node within certainty. Okay. So there's this unknown variable now. Lu Guang's like, I need to figure out and find out what that uncertainty is so I can avoid. I don't know if the certain path means he wants to avoid the path that leads directly to Cheng Xiaoshi's death, or if he's talking about a different path that we don't know about yet as the audience. That is a very good question. We still have to figure that out. But yeah, Lu Guang, sweetheart. And Cheng's like, what do I do? And then, hi, shirtless Lu Guang. Hi, how you doing? I'm getting some skin this episode. I'm sure every Lu Guang fan was like, okay. And then him getting the pajamas back on, throwing everything around. And then, he's like, oh God. Why are you so pale and sweaty and out of breath? And having heat cramps. What's going on? Y'all, this entire arc is giving us Cheng Xiaoshi, Lu Guang, like just intimate, cute moments. Why are they wanting to tear our hearts out like this? Why are they doing that? He's like, don't pass out, hang in there. Ridiculous. Okay, so I want to point out, there is a lot of red in this scene with Felix and with Liu Xiao. A lot of red. And red, the power of control, if we're talking about the powers of controlling, Vane is all red themed with the red eyes and everything. So that leads me to believe that his powers, I'm going to guess Vane's powers are a combination of control and moving through time, because it seems like he can influence, and see things through Lu Guang, or is it just Lu Guang's nightmares? We don't exactly know what Vane can do as far as his powers, but it seems like they're on with control. I feel like the color red in this scene is referring to control in the sense that Liu Xiao is in control and using Felix as a pawn. I think that's tied because there's a lot of red in this scene. There's all the stoplights are red, the red bus, the red taillights. Felix like, I'm at the corner. Then there is this black car. Also, I realized Liu Xiao and the black car is totally giving me vibes from the main guy in the live action Link Click series that, was totally not villainous. Same vibes. But yeah, the black car, sure. And with the red trim. Come on now. Because he's like, come on, Barbie, let's go party. If that black car pulled up with all the trimmings and that man looked out at me, I'd be like, I'll get a taxi. Thank you, sir. And Felix is like, okay, fine. Pain in the neck client. I love it. Yeah, all the red. Red buses, the red London buses, the red stoplights, everything is red. Like, nope, not good. Red flags everywhere. The red flags are constantly around all of this. I do love that shot of Felix reflected in the window. It's really good. He says, it's just as you predicted. He heard what Uncle Fong... Okay, so Uncle Fong, yep. He's already off looking for that survivor's lead. Okay. He says, good. Just keep an eye on them. So he wants that to happen. So I don't know what to make of this, and report back every day. Now he says, Vane mentioned your birthday coming up soon, so I wanted to get you a present. And this is an early gift. And you know what? Good on Felix for being like, I don't take gifts from strangers. No, thank you. Also, what the fudge did you give him in that little box? What is that? What's in the box? What's in the box? I don't take bribes. He's like, it's not that serious. I'm just making a friend. And he's like, a friend? I also love the fact that Felix is like, no, I don't want to be your friend. No, thank you. And he says, Vane has mentioned before that you're the kind of guy who never hides their thoughts, and he's right. And I like that about you. I mean, that makes sense in itself because Felix is very, like, wears his emotions on his sleeve. Liu Xiao can tell when you're lying by your heartbeats. So if you're honest all the time, he doesn't have to worry about having to detect whether you're going to betray him or not because you're very open about that. But he's like, but it feels you're not very fond of me. And he's like, of course I'm not. You hired me to spy on someone. He's like, it's not exactly normal behavior. And so then damn it, Liu Xiao says, do you want to know why I'm doing this? And we, the audience, are like, yes. And Felix is like, no, I have integrity. And we're like, quit having integrity. So he's like, nope. He's like, I just get paid to do my job. I don't want all the messy details. And he's like, fine. And he's like, so here's the money and you can check it. And he wants him to check it to know that there's extra money in there so he can ask about the extra favor. And he's like, because I have another task for you, which is you're not just tailing Cheng. You're also going to keep an eye on Guang. And that's when Felix is like, but why? And he's like, well, you said you didn't want to know details. So why does it matter? I feel bad for Felix because Liu Xiao knows what he's doing and he's manipulating him. The thing that's so weird is that Vane, who seems to really like Felix, is okay with all this going down. And it's like, does Vane really like Felix, or is Vane also using Felix? I feel like Felix is in trouble, and I don't like where this is headed with him. Yeah. And he says, I don't have any bad intentions. And I'm like, that is the lie of the century. He says, I'm Cheng Xiaoshi, and this is Liu Guang. And he could hear the heartbeats. And was like, uh-huh. Yeah. Also, all the buses, the red lines. He's like, I'm getting curious. Okay, so there's 4 pills gone from the cold medicine. We see Cheng in the glass. He's like, I think if I want to find my dad, we should focus on the fire. And he's like, if we can find some photos from back then, I can help you. So he's like, yeah, you got to the point. So then he's like, do you remember Zhao Jun? His case inspired me. So even if it didn't cover it, you can still dig up clues on social media. So I did some searching and found a lot of information. And then that's when they find the photo from James Brown, no less. Okay. So Cheng's about to become James Brown. He's like, do you think I'm a genius? The broken link of the clue has been found. And so Liu Guang says, now everything's back on track. So the next step should be, and when he closed his hands, he says, the next part's up to you. Was him closing his hands and Cheng doing this with his hands at the same time what triggered it? Is that what triggered his power working? Because this is the first time that's happened, right? Because then he says, okay, because yeah, his hands were closed. And then was that a trigger to his powers? I don't remember. Oh no, I want to go back to that. Because yeah. And that's when he disappears. And Liu Guang is like, oh, that did not seem like it was intended to happen. So it did not seem intentional that that was supposed to happen. At all. Right? So he went to the photo, and then there's a girl there, and she's like, you're lunatic. And so then he becomes Tsukishima from IQ. He literally looks like Tsukishima from IQ. So Was Cheng's powers not supposed to activate? Was Lu Guang just supposed to look at the photo and go from there? So was the photo Lu Guang and Cheng Xiaoshi with the power and the photo? What do we do with that? Because he goes into the burning building and then breaks the window to get in and sees the kid. The kid is the one that they're supposed to save, right? Here's my thing. This is the weird part about the survivor, okay? If they said there was a survivor from the fire, then was that assuming that Cheng didn't do this? Because Lu Guang seems surprised that it happened. Lu Guang seems surprised that Cheng went into the photo. Like it wasn't supposed to be that way. But then how did anybody survive? How did that kid survive? How did anybody survive if nobody showed up? How did that happen? Unless someone shows up onto the scene here after the fact, but I don't think that's the case. So did this have to happen to have a survivor? Did they go back and say, are they going to try to go back into a different photo to do it? Can you even do that? How does that work? Because then Cheng's like, okay, hey, don't be scared, I'm coming. And they try to go help them. But then there's a bunch of debris that fall and they get knocked back. Why does all these bad things have to happen to Cheng? Why does Cheng have to have this happen? Because then they look over and there's a shoe. But is it the shoe of the kid that just died? Did the kid just die? Is that a different body? Are those different bodies? Do they end up saving the one person? Because then they think that they hear his dad's voice upstairs. And he's like, what do we do? And then he thinks he hears his dad. And he jumps upstairs as the thing is burning. Of course, all the stoplights are red. There's a no crossing sign, like this shouldn't happen. And then it looks like there's a fire truck pulling up right as he goes upstairs. And he's like, why? Why is he here? And then he says, hurry. And there's a man standing there with a woman. And they're saying we have to hurry. And there's no time to explain the fire. It was planned. So then he kicks open the door to see who's standing there, and there's a woman there. But is that woman, is that Liu Min's mom? Surely not. Or is that the woman? And he says, Dad. That looks like, is it Liu Min's mom? Because there's the guy that I'm assuming is him. But then she's standing there. What is she has something red in her hands? What? And then the fire knocks him back. And then a tape cassette ends. Is somebody's power tied to a tape cassette? What? And it kicks him out of the photo. Why is there a tape cassette? Why does that have to do with anything? But why? But why is there a tape cassette? I'm like, is that, because, yeah, who is she? I thought for a second she was like Liu Min's mom from there, but we don't get to see. And I wanted to go back and see she has something in her hands. He's standing there. They're teasing us like the Dickens. He's obviously dressed kind of like, I don't want to say like Liu Xiao, but kind of. And she has something on there. What is she wearing? And they get knocked back and there's a tape cassette. And I don't understand. The tape cassette seems like it's tying back to the twins, but I don't understand why. And then he gets kicked out of the photo. And Lu Guang's like, what do we do? And then he's back. And he's like, what happened there? Oh. And I feel so bad for Cheng Xiaoshi because he's like, well, dude, I don't even know what happened. Because he just seems like without words. He's like, what did you do there? And he's like, well, I didn't save anybody, that's for sure. And the kid died. So seemingly, So what do? I could do nothing. Uh-huh. And then there were none. So yeah. Okay. Yep, okay. We know Vane's name now. We don't know Vane's ability. We haven't seen the blonde woman yet. Cheng went back in time. I'm assuming this is the first time this happened in this timeline. Didn't save anybody that we know of. So, did that guy die? Did that change the events of everything? Why did we stop there? Because they had to. Because that was the choice the show had. So they wouldn't go back. And now I'm like, ah! Anyway. Anyway, that's all I know, y'all. But, oh my God. So, yeah. Go figure. I'm going to be diving a lot more into the rabbit hole over the next week with the comments on YouTube for episode 2 and the comments for episode 3 on Patreon and the comments on Discord for episode 4. We have there's like a tier of comments as we go, but I'm going to have a lot of thinking to do before episode 5. Next week's the penultimate episode of this arc. Next week is the penultimate episode of this arc. Are you freaking kidding me? Y'all. Well, we have a lot to think about, so in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'm back next week with episode 5 of Link Click. Bye.